iPredict works by gathering the knowledge of its 5,000 plus traders. If a stock has a price of 57 cents, that means the market thinks that event has a 57% chance of happening. If you agree, you buy. If you disagree, you short. And if you're right, you make money. Kia ora, good evening New Zealand. This is day 15 until the country goes to the polls. Welcome to iPredict Election 2011, the most accurate source of political and economic information in New Zealand broadcasting. Our three predictions tonight. Prediction 1. The iPredict market is predicting an 83% probability that Peter Dunne will win Oharu, but will United Futures' association with National as a public sector job cutter spoil the celebration? Prediction 2. The iPredict market says United Future will gain 1% of the party vote. Could United Future gain a second MP, or is the market being optimistic? Prediction 3. With National dropping to 46% party vote on the market and the prediction of a key bank's tea party coming true, does New Zealand First jump in today's polls have a chance to change this election? To dissect these predictions, let me introduce tonight's panel. He has proven to be one of MMP's quickest adapters. If politics was Survivor Island, he'd be the accountant to the network filming it. It's a pleasure to welcome United Future leader and Revenue Minister Peter Dunne. And she is from Auckland University's Film, Television and Media Studies Department, blogger Phoebe Fletcher. Welcome to you both. We'll also wrap the show with a final prediction, but let's kick things off with tonight's first market prediction. The market currently predicts Peter Dunne to win his seat by a 83% probability. But is his 2008 majority of 1,006 voters enough? Peter, the PSA claimed 5,000 public sector jobs have been cut in the 3 years of this government. 14% of your electorate are public service workers. A vote for you is a vote for National, and a vote for National is Tony Ryle promising on The Nation last weekend more than 500 more public sector jobs if re-elected. How will you insulate that sector of your electorate?
Well, in fact, what we're seeing is a lot of change occurring across the public sector. A lot of it is actually because jobs are becoming more upskilled and more modern, you know, and there's change taking place all the time. I've not picked up a huge antipathy to the changes in the Wellington region. Obviously people are concerned, but they understand some of the background as to why this is occurring. And if it leads to a better public service and better public services, then well and good. What will I do? I'll do what I've always done. I'll work with people who are affected, I'll lobby ministers as appropriate, and I'll make sure that if there are clearly cuts that are just cuts for the sake of cuts, that we make a very strong case in opposition to them.
Tony Ryle seemed pretty keen on The Nation when he said more than 500,
well, look,
didn't he?
I haven't heard numbers, but what I do know is that there are a number of changes being contemplated at the moment which are about bringing together back office services, improving the way in which some things are delivered. I'll give you an example. In my own department, we're going through a process of frontline service delivery change at the moment, where we've had a huge network up and down New Zealand of district offices. We're retaining them all. We're retaining all our frontline services. But in a lot of cases, there have been back office functions performed in those offices that don't need to be. They can be done more centrally, ironically, in Wellington. And what we'll be doing, in Wellington, Christchurch and Auckland actually, what we'll be doing is bringing some of those jobs back into the centre, but still retaining frontline service, so that from the point of view of the public, they probably get an enhanced service actually.
Sure for the public, but for those who are possibly facing losing their jobs, what are they looking to you for?
Well, in this instance, what they're looking to me for is some assurance that we'll handle that in a sensitive way, that they're not going to be rammed out the door tomorrow. A lot of people in that revenue example are being offered either a redeployment or redundancy. A number are actually saying this is actually because of the nature of their employment in provincial New Zealand. This is actually quite the time to make a change. And so provided they get a long lead in, and we're talking several months here, they can adapt to it. And I think that's probably the key actually right across the board. The days of these sort of blunt, you know, you're down the road tomorrow, gone sort of situations, I think are over. I think people will
you'll give people enough time to adapt.
If they've got time to adapt.
But wouldn't they be looking to you as Minister of Revenue as well for job creation? I mean, we've had the figure from National of 170,000 jobs that the Ministry of Economic Development said in July that they had no idea where that figure came from. So how would United Future be helping with job growth?
Well, I think you've got to look at where the jobs are going to come from in the future. The Greens, for instance, have got a policy of 100,000 new green jobs. It sounds good in practice, but a lot of the jobs are very short term, planting riparian strips, insulating houses. I'm not knocking that, but I'm saying that you really need to start to think about longer term sustainable jobs.
But isn't that National Cycleway as well?
Well, you could argue, I think you could argue that. And I think one of the things we get fixated on in this debate is you've got to keep unemployment down. So there's a whole lot of sort of, it's a bit like the duck, you know, paddling furiously underwater just to keep things going as they are. The real challenge is the one you posed before. How do you create long-term jobs? Where are they going to be? We know that the days where our primary production sector is going to be the bulwark of our economy is probably at its peak. They're probably at its peak now. So we need to start to think about opportunities in the service sector, new technologies. Green technology does play its part, services, etc.
Phoebe, Katrina Shanks won 10,009 votes. So even if all 2,665 Green voters who voted for Gareth in 2008 strategically voted for Charles, he'd still fall short of a combined National United Future vote. But National supporters, as we're seeing in Epsom, are fiercely independent. Will Peter Dunne need his own coffee date with John Key?
I think this is a possibility, isn't it? Or has the coffee date already occurred? Because you've got supply and confidence agreement with him, don't you? Over your tax splitting agreement there.
But just to make sure they don't vote for Katrina, does he need a coffee date?
Possibly. There was like 1,004 votes in it last time,
yeah,
wasn't there?
1,006.
Everyone
can. Look,
would you like a coffee date with John?
I can actually have a cup of coffee, or actually my preference is tea. With
tea.
With the Prime Minister virtually any time.
But in public,
do I want this sort of thing?
Election, yes.
We're not planning on one at this stage.
Okay.
And the reason is I'm busy. The Prime Minister's busy.
Yep.
It's convenient for him and John Banks in Auckland, but you know.
But would you be open to it?
Oh, you're open to a lot of things, but it's not. It's not on my agenda.
Okay, it's not on your agenda. No. So, if internal polling was suggesting that Katrina's starting to creep up a little bit there?
No, I don't have that fear.
Okay.
In fact, if anything, it's going the other way.
Okay.
Look, there's still 2 weeks to run in this campaign. Yep. I'm pretty confident and comfortable with where we're at the moment, and we'll just see what transpires.
But you're open to maybe a coffee date in the last week?
If the Prime Minister was to ring him up and say, how about doing tea?
Yes.
Why not? But I'm not really looking to that or actually expecting it.
Question to both of you. Katrina didn't seem happy about not being able to win the electorate. What will National Party voters do here? If it's about parliamentary math and United Future doesn't win an extra seat, why wouldn't they vote for Katrina?
Well, I mean, this is kind of the thing, is, you know, do you vote for one MP or do you vote for the party that you like?
Yep.
And the vote is so close. I think, you know, Katrina was only another 1,000 votes behind
That's right,
Charles.
that's right. It's really, really close.
It's interesting because Labor are claiming that their internal polling say that they're going to win the electorate. So I think it is, you know, a bit of a fight that is going on here.
Who should National Party voters vote for?
Here's the numbers.
Yep.
If you add Katrina's and my vote together and say that is the government vote.
20,000 votes.
It's 20-odd thousand. 22, 23,000. If you add the Labor Green vote together, it's about, what, 15,000?
It's short. So
there's quite a big difference.
Yeah.
So what I say to people is, you've got to work out what you want. If you want the current government and its direction to be maintained, then you can draw your conclusion about who's the best candidate to carry that forward for you. If you want to change, then do what you like. But I think that's what it comes down to. And people, I don't think are in any way unafraid of confronting that. They can work it out and they can make their own conclusions. But you know, one of the things that intrigues me is that there's all this talk about deals and endorsements and everything else. It's no different from you on this show or a newspaper editor saying, vote for so-and-so. At the end of the day, we make our call when we go behind that screen and tick that box. And you've got to rely on the confidence and the judgment of people to get it right.
Question to both of you. At an 83% probability of you winning, is this a buy because you're a dead cert, or short it because Charles Cheval and staunch National parties will upset the market? What's your call? You're going to buy stock?
I'd buy the stock.
You do.
But I tell you why. And it's nothing to do with the vagaries of the market. It's to do with what I'm getting by way of feedback on the street. The people who stop me just to wish me well, the people who email me, the people who actually stop me in shopping centres and say things like, they've never done this before, can I have a photograph with you? You know, they're all good, positive signs. And I must say that, in my sense, this is the most positive election I've had in the last three.
Okay. 83% too high? Optimism?
Yeah, I think, I mean, it is possibly going to be a bit closer. I mean, the latest Colmar-Brunton poll had you guys on 0.2% of the party vote.
No, landline polls. We'll get into the landline polls in a second, yes.
But no, I think in terms of if I, you know, was trading stock, I think there's other more lucrative stocks that you could trade.
Oh, so you'd short it. Thank you, panel. Let's move on to prediction 2. The market is predicting that United has 1% party vote. At 1.2% party vote, United Future could get a second MP. Is the market being optimistic, or has it yet to price in the value of a second MP? Peter, figures released yesterday reveal an economy that has gone from bad to worse. For the first quarter of the financial year, GST revenue fell by 4.2%, individuals tax take was down 13.2%, and corporate tax take was down by 3.2%. Treasury's black swans have seemingly all come home to roost while you're the revenue minister. How is United Future suggesting we handle this global recession?
I think you've got to look at this in a global sense. We are in no way in the same position as the Italys, the Greeces, or most of Europe. We will be affected and are being affected by what is happening there.
The feedback of it.
So New Zealand's in a much stronger position. Some of those figures with regard to tax revenue declining are in part explained by the events in Christchurch earlier in the year, particularly around consumption, GST. The personal tax take declining, not surprising considering we cut personal tax rates earlier in the year. Company rates down a little bit. That's consistent with the general slowing in the economy. But I think that if you go forward, what we've been really focusing on is trying to maintain New Zealand at a certain level, that we don't slip right down into the deep despair of depression, and we're not going to, and then create the platform from which the growth of the jobs we were talking about before. So
United Future's solution to the global recession is to just kind of hold on by the fingernails.
Well, in essence, yes.
Right.
I mean, what we've done in New Zealand in the past, if you go back to the 90s, our solution to the Asian crisis and the aftermath of the '87 share market crash was to slash and burn, pare everything back, sort of get everything back to the basics, and then wait for the new flowers to grow. It never happened. What I think has happened this time, if you go back even to the time of the Job Summit, is a more pragmatic approach, saying, if you like, it is, to use your comment, hanging on by your fingertips, hanging in there, making sure that most people are, and I use the phrase deliberately, sort of reasonably okay, so that when the good time comes, you've at least got some foundation to move from. Much harder when you've scorched the earth, burnt the village and destroyed it, as we know.
As Revenue Minister, do you have faith in Alan Bollard? Do you think he's the man
yes,
to be able to get us through this?
I do, and I think that what it's going to take to get right through, not just in New Zealand but around the world, is more people with that degree of phlegmatic approach.
Right, because Alan's pretty negative, isn't he?
He is.
He came out, that Treasury warning
but he's also quite pragmatic in the way I think he's looked at the management of the interest rate, for instance. And I think that the real danger here is that, as has happened too often in the past, it happened with Don Brash in the mid-90s, just when the first signs of restoration and growth started to occur, you clamp down and you stifle it.
Phoebe,
I just don't think we can afford that
The
again.
beauty of United Future was its centrist politics, but in a recession this steep, with the middle classes feeling less middle class by the month, does United Future have long-term viability, especially with Colin Creagh's Conservative Party now launched?
Well, I would say that United Future is kind of a party that comes forth less about economics and actually more about moral values. I think as
that's your perception.
That's my perception of it, and that's why the Conservative Party are growing as well. I mean, you vote United Future if you're not quite sure about the left and the right, right? That's your tagline. You know, in terms of dealing with the recession, I mean, I've said this many times before, I don't think that you can compare the 1987 stock market crash to what's going on at the moment with the Eurozone and with Italy.
You think it's worse?
I think it's worse.
Oh,
my sources that work for you know, financial institutions overseas that, you know, on the inside and these sorts of things are telling me that our commodity prices are too fragile, that we have a kind of perception of stability in New Zealand that we simply don't have. We're also leaning on China a lot, which is also beginning to
I mean, what we're seeing at the
look
moment
socially unstable.
in Europe, if you think about it coldly, this is the unravelling of the post-war economic and political settlement. The irony is, of course, that was put in place to prevent Germany becoming resurgent. Germany's the one bulwark of hope in Europe at the moment. But
the ironies.
The irony. But when you think about that, that's what's happening. Now, previously we've been buttressed by a strong United States in such situations. The United States is weak, so China looms much larger in our thinking. And then I think there are, as you say, issues about China's long-term stability and direction. But can I go back to your comment before about...
Yeah, you can.
United Future is not a moralist party. We've had elements in the past who were of that bent. We have...
You purge them?
Purge them, if you like, would be the good term. They now are the Conservative Party, so they're not a challenge to us at all. United Future is, if you like, the classic middle of the road, very similar to the British Liberal Party, the Liberal Party prior to the Liberal Democrats. A very strong view about free markets, free trade, open economies. coupled with an equally strong view about no man or woman being an island. We have a responsibility to look after each other, even though we do stand for quite a strong emphasis of the rights of the individual. So,
So
there's not, but I think the perception is one we've got.
No, I mean, what I was more so saying is that you don't vote for a minor party, right, for a grand economic plan, because you're simply not going to have influence.
And that's a fair point. But what we do bring to the table, if you let me put it very starkly, John Key is almost certain to be Prime Minister after this election, unless something dramatic happens. Now, the flavour of a John Key-led government after the election has, I think, two options. One is he works with Don Brash and John Banks and whoever else, and that is a very uncomfortable arrangement because the Brash Act line is much more harsh, right-wing, much more prescriptive.
They'll sell off the continental shelf if they could.
If they could find it.
If they could find it, yeah.
Or he works with United Future, which I think is more, I think my style, my tone is more in line with his than with, than the Brash's. So it's a more moderate, reasonable, pragmatic, flexible, let's do what we need to rather than be hidebound by the ideology.
Both.
He may need both. And what
How
I'm
are you
saying
going to compete with Don? How would you compete with Don Brash at the table?
At a personal level, I get on very well with Don.
Oh, we all get on well with him on a personal level. He's just crazy ideas.
But I think that what John Key needs is a counterpoint to those crazy ideas. Someone else he can say, well, hang on, Don, can't go there because I need their vote as well, and they won't deliver it. So we need to have sufficient numbers to be that bulwark, or ideally, to make the bulwark unnecessary.
Question to both of you. Let's focus on United Future policy here. One that's always interested me. Income sharing. Doesn't income sharing inadvertently, Peter, encourage women post-childbirth to stay at home? Should our tax policy accentuate gender imbalances?
No, what it does is it gives them a choice, and they will make a choice based on the numbers and what the income benefit to them is. It's no different in that sense from paid parental leave. If you think about the fundamental proposition, paid parental leave enables parents to spend more time at home with their newborn children. Income sharing in a different way provides that opportunity. The maximum benefit for an individual family would be around $9,000 a year. In most cases, it would probably be around 2/3 of that max. So they've got to make a call as to whether that additional income is worth the person choosing to stay at home. It might just be the thing that tips the balance. They may say, it's not going to work for us, but we say, why not give them that choice?
Feminist academics are quite big on this, aren't they? They do get quite angry with this idea, don't they?
Well, I don't know. I'm actually in two minds on this one. I mean, there's a few factors here. The first would be that there's a kind of moral premise here. I guess that, by subsidising women to stay at home, that we might raise more stable families. That's certainly the argument that's been put forward by the Conservatives in the UK. But I'm in two minds. I mean, obviously, it kind of favours a traditional patriarchal relationship. But also, if we look, I think in 2009 there was a study done by the psychology department of the University of Auckland where they found that women on average were doing 20 to 21 hours more childcare than their male partners. Right. And I think it was about 6 hours a week housework.
So this is a way of recognising it? Income splitting?
I mean, does it apply to both partners? Is it the man that can stay at home as well?
Yes. And the real point about it is that what it's doing is moving towards the concept of household income rather than individual income, if you think about it. It's not that the man goes out to work and earns the money, which he then gives a nice little sum to his wife to spend on the housekeeping. It's not that notion. But it's saying this is money that is coming in to the household. Both partners contribute, maybe in different ways, to that household. One might be the person who's in paid employment, the other might be running the home side. It also, of course, some people will be in part-time employment as well, but it gives them some choices about how they arrange their own affairs.
I mean, isn't there the argument too that tends to favour wealthier families?
Well, it's certainly true that because of the way in which the tax rates are structured, that the higher up the income scale are, the more likely you are to benefit. But you've got to lay that alongside working for families. And what I'd like to see happen in the bigger term is, if you like, income sharing being available for the top end of that market. That would then free up more resource to restructure some of the big imbalances around working for families where you've got...
National do take you know, attack working for families.
Yeah, would you allow that to happen?
No, and in fact, I've already, this year we've been through some issues around that. We've made some changes. That's far less dramatic than were originally proposed. But the big problem with working for families still remains, and that is at certain income points, the amount of additional income someone might earn because they get a promotion or a new job is more than offset by the way in which their working for families entitlement is abated. So in other words, their income might go up, their working for families comes down because they're earning more, the net income actually comes down. So what we're saying is I think it's at that interface you need to start to think about, well, maybe working for families isn't for them. Something like income sharing could well provide that uplift.
Question
but it's a flexible one.
Question to both of you. With the market predicting 1% party vote for United Future, would you buy it because the market hasn't priced in the value of a second MP at 1.2%, or short it because 1% is optimistic?
No, I'd buy it. I'd buy it.
You can get 1.2?
If you look at what's been happening in the polls of late, we have been up in every poll in the last 3 weeks, and we're trending certainly around that 1% mark. It's 1.2. I think in the next 2 weeks we can cross that. I'm actually focusing on 2.1, which is the point that brings in a third MP, and that gets back to your point, Phoebe, about then that that counterbalance.
1.2 is that's got a lot of power at 1.2.
I would buy it at 1. Yeah.
You'd buy it at 1. Hey, we're going to buy it. Thank you, panel. Moving on to prediction 3. With National dropping to 46% party vote on the market and the prediction of a key bank's Tea Party coming true, does New Zealand First jump in today's landline polls have a chance to change this election? Peter, iPredict have New Zealand First on 4.1%, and after his appearance on this show last night, the probability of him re-entering Parliament has jumped to 20%. Can Winston pull off the surprise of the election, and could United Future work with them if it did?
I don't think Lazarus has made as many comebacks. So who knows? It could be history in the making. I think it's unlikely. I think the question of what his impact will be how big his discard vote is, because that then affects the mathematics for everyone else. Could we work with them in government? We did between 2005 and 2008, and in some areas we had agreement. In other areas we had vile and strong disagreement. I don't think, this is really paraphrasing one of Phoebe's answers earlier, in a way it's not for us, it's for the major party of government, and John Key's already ruled out working with him, so I don't really think the issue is going to arise. And I don't know what Phil Goff's going to do, but he probably wouldn't want to work with us either anyway.
Phoebe, with New Zealand now literally having their own right-wing Tea Party, does a key brash government concern enough older National Party voters into voting for Winston or voting for Peter?
I don't know if it concerns enough older national voters. I think they're already...
Don Brash and John Key, that makes them happy? Selling of the assets?
I don't think that does make National Party voters happy. I mean, we've seen in the polls, it's 51% of national voters do not want
That's
assets
right, they
sold.
don't
And this has been consistent throughout the election, and there is beginning to be more debate about this. You know, we've also had debate on some of their policies. For example, Treasury came out yesterday and said that the youth wage would not necessarily generate more jobs.
That's right. And they could afford $2 extra.
So, no, I mean, I think that it's interesting because Winston at the moment is saying that he won't work with anyone. So he's saying that he won't work with Labour, he won't work with the Greens. But, you know, this is traditional kind of showman tactics. I think, you know, perhaps once he gets that TVNZ debate and gets on the media a bit more, his vote may rise.
Question to both of you. If Winston gets over the threshold, he'll smother the Greens in any arrangement with Labour. Would a Green National United Future Party be more likely then?
That's an interesting proposition. I don't think you'd ever get the Greens signing a coalition deal or a confidence and supply agreement with National. But I think you could get something akin to what you've got at the moment, in effect, which is a memorandum of understanding, an opportunity for maybe then abstaining on key confidence votes in return for getting some of their
Winston won't work with the Greens.
No, he will not. And I think, you know, an arrangement along those lines is certainly feasible and doable. It just depends, I guess, what the leverage that the Greens will seek from it is. But I wouldn't rule it out.
Winston has got this dislike of the Green Party that sort of overshadows all else. If he got back in and he was cutting a deal with Labour, he wouldn't allow the Greens their due respects in terms of getting into cabinet, would he? That makes the possibility of a green-blue government more likely?
No, I don't think so. I mean, Winston's not going to come in with as many people as the Greens are. Okay, I think that they're going to be a much more kind of powerful party in that sense.
But they're always so crap at cutting deals. Come on, they're always so off. Every election, the Greens always screw up the cutting of the deal. Always do. They always do. Why do you think they'll be better this time?
Well, I think that there has been a change in leadership, and I think that's one of the reasons why their vote has been going up. I mean, we're looking at them possibly having 16 MPs on the last Brunton poll. So I think there's going to have to be a lot of negotiations in there. And I mean, you said a Green United Future coalition, but of course, you know, the ETS would probably mean that they wouldn't be so keen to work with you.
They might, but you see, I chaired the ETS review committee.
That's right.
And we came out with 37 recommendations. Don't ask me to remember them. But the key point was there was universal agreement or unanimous agreement on 34 of those. The 3 that the parties differed on were the timing of entry of agriculture, intensity measures, and one other I just forget offhand.
That's right. Yeah.
So my point is that even on an issue as fraught as that, there is already substantial agreement between all the parties, even with the exception of ACT, that says climate change isn't occurring.
That's right. That's right.
But there's still pretty major disagreements. If you look at Greens and National over the last couple of days over irrigation and so on.
I'm not trying to pretend that there aren't, and I'm not trying to say that this could all be smoothed over.
But it's not impossible.
I don't think it could be smoothed over, but I think you could get to either points of agree to disagree or working to say, well, look, we mightn't be able to go quite that far, but we can start to move in that direction and allow you, the Greens, to still advocate as strongly as you have done for the position.
I'm not agreeing.
No, I mean, I didn't mean you. I didn't mean you personally. I was talking to the.
That's all right.
The wider you. I'm just made it very clear. I was not impugning Phoebe's application in that sense. But so all I'm saying is, I think you could come to that sort of an arrangement. And that, the funny thing about this, I know I'm getting way off the track here, but a lot of people are sort of thinking about the MMP referendum at the moment and sort of what way to vote on that, and I hope they vote to keep it. But one of the things they quite like about MMP, and they don't ever feel they've had yet, is exactly what I've just described. People working together and working through a problem and sort of coming to a solution that gives a little bit here, a little bit there, but is almost like here's a common ground one. So we could actually get to that point in the next Parliament.
Yeah. Final question. At 4.1% party vote, would you buy because Winston could pull off the upset of the election or short it because New Zealand First is a one-trick pony short of a trick?
Oh, I mean, this is a hard one. I mean, it was just under last election, wasn't it? I would, I wouldn't spend a lot of money on it, but I would almost.
But you're going to have a flutter. You're always going to have a flutter, aren't you?
He is. He's like the Terminator. He just rises again and again and again.
I think you need to separate his head and bury them separately for him not to come back from the grave in some sort of vampire spell. But what would you say? 4.1%? Would you buy that or short it?
No, I wouldn't buy it.
You wouldn't? You'd hold?
No, I'd put more money on United Future coming through with about 3 MPs.
Oh, look at that. Pow. Pow. Thank you, panel. Let's wrap the show with a final prediction. Phoebe, your final prediction this evening is?
My final prediction would be Annette Sykes. I think that election there in Waiariki is going to be closer than it is being predicted in terms of the polls. I think that it's been underpolled. A quarter of those people don't have landlines.
That's
a quarter of them are on benefits. And Te Ururoa Flavel was quite late on Te Whānau Apanui, their protest against the deep sea oil rigging. And following the Reno, I think that's going to be a really interesting one to watch. Now, she's only at 34 cents in the iPredict in terms of the stocks, in terms of winning. I would take a punt on that one. It's going to be close.
Peter, your final prediction this evening is?
My prediction's got to be 3 United Future MPs, John Key United Future government keeping Brash Act at bay.
Well, actually, that's almost worth voting for, isn't it? Thank you, Phoebe. Thank you, Peter, to my final prediction. I predict open stock this week on whether or not the National Party would win 50% or over of the party vote. That stock has tracked down to only a 35% probability, while National's party vote dropped from a high of 48% at the beginning of the week down to 46%, the territory in which you would need a coalition partner. The market is looking beyond the hype of the landline opinion polls and clearly reassessing the probable parliamentary math. Market momentum in the second week of the 2011 election is away from National and makes Labour at 27% party vote a buy. Next week we are joined by Materia Toure, Jacinda Ardern, Simon Bridges, Grant Robertson, Matt McCartan, Neil Miller and Matthew Hooton. Follow me on my Citizen Former Facebook and Twitter accounts for all my latest election updates. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you again tomorrow, next week, 7 p.m. for iPredict Election 2011, exclusively on Stratus TV. Until then, get trading.